So Doom Patrol Episode 5, Paw Patrol introduces the Recreator against the Decreator. And we also get the Chief back with Mr. Nobody. Things just keep getting crazier in Doom Patrol, so let's break this episode down. How's it going, Patrollers of the Doom Patrollers, whatever, welcome to a brand new video and review of episode 5 of Doom Patrol. This was a really wicked episode. Don't know if you noticed the lights in the background, a bit of a fail here. I got every freaking light to light up apart from that one. It didn't reach. But don't let that distract you in this episode review because, you know, this episode was really good. I really enjoyed it. What I loved, I think, so much about Paw Patrol episode 5 was it was very Crazy Jane focused. Now, it didn't dive specifically into her origin. I feel like what they're trying to do here, and I've called Robot Man the heart of this show, but I truly believe that Crazy Jane mixed with a bit of Robot Man is definitely the key, not maybe the key, but one of the heavily focused things in this, actual entire season. They did dabble a little bit with her origin, but it's not, I don't know, they kind of teased it, Mr. Nobody did, but we'll get to all of that. The storyline was crazy at this point anyway, with the Recreator, or should I say the Decreator first, and they had to figure out a way to stop him. And that is when we got the Chief in this episode back again, with his idea of creating a new faith, which would summon the Recreator. I don't know, man. I just love Doom Patrol so much. But yeah, let's dive straight into this. So if you're brand new, I know it's a bit random to be doing it this far into it, subscribe for more Doom Patrol discussions just like this. I encourage you guys to get involved in the comment section down below, expand on what I say, maybe agree or disagree with what I have to say, whatever. I just love the conversation that we have about this show and where it could go, because, with TV shows and movies, they don't always carbon copy the comic book storylines. They change it a little bit up so it's new, fresh, a new iteration and offers kind of new mystery. So at the very beginning of the episode, we did see that flashback to 1977 Crazy Jane in the mosh pit. She's going ham, but we also saw Ezekiel the cockroach. I had to look him up a bit more because I found out that he was actually apparently supposed to be integrated into Supernatural, but Doom Patrol was a more fitting place for this cockroach to this talking cockroach who prophesizes like the end of the world. And we did see him when that like massive sinkhole or whatever you want to call it from Mr. Nobody was created in episode 1, but it was just funny to see him back. I've got a feeling he'll keep coming back in like disasterly events that the Doom Patrol has to kind of stop. Of course, guys, we had the Decreator literally blinking everything out of existence. It's kind of convenient that he didn't blink the Doom Patrol out of existence, because then quite literally there would be nothing left if it probably weren't for these guys. But mind you, I wonder what would have happened to the Justice League or something like that if the Doom Patrol had failed to stop the Decreator, for example. Now, going back to Nirnheim for a second, of course, we still had like the Mother Archon talking to Crazy Jane and Robot Man. But I believe that if I remember correctly, that was Kay, the younger version of Jane. Now, what they seem to be doing with Crazy Jane's character, especially in this episode as well, and I think they have teased it in previous episodes, is like, who is Kay? Like, who is Kay Chalice? And now, from my understanding, Kay Chalice is actually the OG personality of Crazy Jane. Jane Morris is the first alter ego or like split personality from Kay, and things just kind of went through there on out, and you can see that each personality that Jane has had on the show so far in reference to Kay has really kept her super tightly locked down, because her comic book history, from what I've read about, is very, very dark. What happened to Jane when she was younger. And it's just interesting to see what they're going to do with this in the show. I feel like Robot Man's going to be able to reach her. And it was nice just even seeing if that was Kay. I'm pretty sure, was it? I think it was. Sorry, fuzzy memory off the top of my head right now. But, how she picked up Robot Man's brain. This was like truly, I don't know, I'm just really looking forward to seeing where this goes and the mystery that it's going to unravel in terms of Doom Patrol's on DC Universe's iteration of the comics. But it goes without saying that I really enjoyed Cliff Steele / Robot Man's and Crazy Jane's, even though it's like Penny, the British personality from Crazy Jane, their scenes this episode. I always love those two together. I've said this probably 5 times already in this review, so that kind of goes without saying. Now, this is where we got Mr. Nobody back. A couple of you guys may be wondering, where has he been? So has he himself. He's like, I haven't been in the last 2 episodes, and that just made me me laugh out loud quite a lot. He refuses to let the decreator decreate everything. He refuses that this is the end, because as we know about Mr. Nobody, especially from I think the line that Niles Calder used himself, the chief, even Mr. Nobody's omniscience, it has its limits or something like that. He believes, Mr. Nobody is super powerful, as is demonstrated already, especially throughout this episode. But he's not a god, and we're going to get down to the bottom of that by the end of this season. But the decreator is, somebody who I think is putting Mr. Nobody's ego into check almost, and he wants to prevent it. So this episode introduced that really interesting dynamic with Chief working with Mr. Nobody, and I really enjoyed that. So anyway, we learned from the chief himself that the decreator is literally a product of faith, and he even puts it like upon years of faith birthed the decreator into existence, and to oppose it you essentially just need faith against it. So he says you will need like a leader, and there's only one person he can think of, and that is surprise, Jane, but a very specific version of Jane. And this is where it really gripped me this episode. I was like, okay, where the hell are we going to go from here? And so Mr. Nobody literally dives into the past of like 1976 Jane, and this is where like Mr. Nobody himself teases to the audience like, oh, is this the moment when Jane was given her like powers or something like that, when she was like being injected? Now I know Jane's multiple personalities were each given like a power from, if I remember correctly, the Dominator gene bomb. Now what they showed here was her being injected with something, so I don't know if this is Doom Patrol's, because they didn't fully explore this moment. You saw like her veins like rippling, and I'm assuming that this might be Doom Patrol's version of how she got like the powers. I'm not entirely sure, and it's hard to know exactly what's going on here. As I said, in the comics it is like for a Dominator gene bomb. That's not what was being done there, unless they gathered some like substance of the Dominators and they're changing up that way. But it's going to be interesting to see if they explore her origin even further and revisit this moment where she was on that table being injected. But this is where mainly I would say for this episode we got the personality of Dr. Harrison, and this was a really funny moment when Jane was like on the table again essentially, and she was being questioned by Dr. Bertrand, I think that's how you say his name, but when Dr. Harrison came out, she essentially, I believe, has the powers of really strong persuasion and charm, if you will, so she was making that doctor like almost stab himself repeatedly in the eyes. But anyway, getting back on point, Dr. Harrison, the personality, one of the personalities of Crazy Jane, was the person who would create this new faith, and when the time comes, summon the Recreator to defeat the Decreator. Like, saying this out loud, as I said, is very interesting to say the least. So essentially with this storyline throughout the episode, we see Jane, or Dr. Harrison's version, consistently add more and more people from that sanatorium to the faith, and like, when the time comes in the future, you need to dance when the eye comes, and basically just set up everything that we saw in present day way back in like 1976 or 77 with Crazy Jane setting it all up, which was pretty interesting to see. And I don't know if you guys spotted this before they actually blatantly showed it in the episode, but in the sanatorium as well, we saw Marilyn when she was younger. We saw her right at the beginning of the episode with like the badass zipper lighter that she had. Now we had some more nice moments with Rita. I really liked her scenes with Elliot, the book himself last episode. I did not expect for him to get blinked out of existence by the Decreator. It's like, first he was like, blaming himself for it, and it's just like nice moment, and he shouldn't blame himself. Rita was like comforting him, and then boom, he was gone. Now when Chief returned to Doom Manor, this was pretty interesting to see. I loved seeing him interact with Kipling. Obviously, if you guys watched my last review, I loved Kipling in the previous episode. It was just fantastic, and he was just as entertaining this episode. We got to see a bit of their past, and how the last time like Niles saw him, he left him for dead in some cave. I can't remember where, but of course everyone was like, what the living heck? He literally just turns up at Doom Manor again walking, so everyone was really confused. But that's when he explains to everyone he's working with Mr. Nobody, which obviously confuses the hell out of everyone, but it's like a necessary kind of evil to defeat the decreator, which, you know, had to be done. If you guys remember as well in last episode when Kipling and Cyborg were having that conversation, and I really like how Doom Patrol are like, you know, making this apparent throughout multiple episodes, and how Cyborg had this kind of fatherly relationship with Chief quite a while ago, but then he learned from Kipling that there is two sides to him, and he's just like, no, surely there's not. And in this episode, we had that moment between Cyborg and Chief where, you know, Cyborg was basically starting to realize what Kipling said to him in the last episode was true. So this explored that quite a bit more, and I'm looking forward to more scenes with the Chief and Cyborg whenever Chief returns, because obviously he has to go by the end of the episode. But we also got that negative man scene with Chief as well, and this is why I want Chief to be back, so we can learn a lot more about everyone else. And that's when obviously we got that torture comment from the spirit, as they call it, in the last episode as well. I believe that was the last episode, but I really like the Chief's explanation in terms of how the spirit only feels tortured, or like he said, tortured, because, you know, Negative Man, or Larry, if you will, tortures himself. He also teases how powerful the negative energy spirit is as well. So, you know, I'm liking the setup for this as well, but I'm really looking forward to seeing when those two really like blend together, and we get to see like this full potential of the Negative Man. Now, I didn't expect for Kipling to summon Baphomet. I believe that's how you say her name, but anyway, again, because obviously they wanted to find the location of the rewritten book, because, you know, this is kind of timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, because the stuff that was going on in the past had to take effect in the present, you know, and it also makes me wonder at the same time, I don't know if anyone else is thinking this after this episode, but through Mr. Nobody manipulating a little bit of Jane's past, does this like affect her much in the present? Because assumingly her past, you know, those days in the past, she never originally set up the cult of the rewritten book. So I'm wondering if they're just going to leave that, or if there is any implications of Mr. Nobody interfering with her past. But also, we got that moment at the end of the episode where Mr. Nobody planted a seed, and I will get to that by the end of this review. But I totally forgot as well, in the past, they came up with the idea to put the words on not a boy, but a freaking pug, a dog. A freaking pug was the book now. Not a human like Elliot, but a pug, of course. Why would I think of anything different? This is when, at the same time, Marilyn, if you remember, who was also in a sanatorium with Jane way back in the day, arrives in freaking, well, she actually did the whole thing that they had to do, goes to like Spain, you know, enter through the gates of Nurnheim and everything like that. And her purpose was essentially to remind Jane to bring out Dr. Harrison so she would know what to do at that time, so she could ring the bell, and so that would activate the words out of the pug. You know, this is just such all crazy stuff, I feel like, for me to cover, but it was really funny as well at the same time, especially when she said like Viva la Recreator, and then just literally blew up her freaking oxygen tank so the others could get to ringing the bell. But that is when the Recreator actually appeared. Obviously, at the same time, we had all of the people who were in the sanatorium from the past dancing in the present, like they were asked to do by Dr. Harrison, and everything just going on was so wacky. And when the eye spawned the Recreator, and you had the Decreator over here, and so I think Cyborg asked Kipling what the heck was going on, and when he said like, I think they're having a staring contest, I just laughed out loud so much. To be honest, after this, I was getting a little bit worried if they weren't going to address what happened to the eye, because they just kind of jumped the scene and everything was getting recreated, but the eyes were still in the sky. But then there was that really quick scene a little bit later where they're both still looking at each other, and then they just kind of blink out of existence. So I'm just guessing they were both just staring at each other in that staring contest, the Decreator and the Recreator, until they both just decreated each other out of existence, and then everything was right with the world again. That bit when everyone was kind of saying goodbye to Chief at the end was really sad as well, especially when Jane ran in and she was just like running down to him, but like he had to go, and that's when Mr. Nobody like froze time, and we had like Cyborg's sonic cannon freaking charging the whole time, and it blew his arm off. This bit was also really sad as well, because he has this like SOS button that if pressed it will alert his father and Star Labs, and he really didn't want that pressed, and the only reason I can just think about that is because he doesn't want to appear as another failure to his father, Silas Stone. Silas will probably be thinking, oh, typical Victor, like screwed up without my help and without my intervention, but Robot Man activated it anyway, so I'm wondering if there's going to be a bit of tension between them both in the next episode, because he did what what Victor didn't want him to do. But you know, that was still like a pretty cool scene within itself. But now the Chief is blinked out of existence again and is with Mr. Nobody, so you know, we're kind of back to square one with finding the Chief. But I did like that flashback to like the origin of Jane and the Chief, because you know, he was in the van at the end, but that is when Mr. Nobody And I said I would talk about this earlier. Said, you know, after all of this is over in like the present, and you know, everything is all okay with the recreator and the decreator. He says, I want you to look for like essentially the Doom Patrol, and that's when we see in present day she realizes after all of this is over, who the F is the Doom Patrol. Now, judging from the synopsis of the next episode and a little bit of the promo, I think what he's trying to get Crazy Jane onto is that understanding that there was a previous kind of Doom Patrol before them, and I'm guessing that through finding them or getting Crazy Jane on the ball of them and maybe learning that they obviously didn't end up so great, or they're probably going to sell some bad stories to, you know, like Cliff, Crazy Jane, Rita, and Larry, that hopefully maybe Mr. Nobody's thinking that this will put them off being Niles' new Doom Patrol, if you will. So that's going to be a pretty cool episode to explore next week, and just seeing what the original Doom Patrol was like, seeing what happened to them, why they retired. But that was essentially the episode, guys. It was a really enjoyable episode. Yet again, Doom Patrol isn't, you know, I feel like isn't losing its momentum at all. We learned some very new, interesting things this episode. It was great seeing Mr. Nobody again, especially with the Chief. So as always, everyone, I would love to know what you thought of this episode down in the comments. Did you think it was good? Do you still think Doom Patrol is keeping up its momentum? Because personally, I do. I think that this episode was really great, and I just don't really have any complaints. It's just wacky and crazy as usual, and it still has its unique charm. But other than that, guys, like this video if you did enjoy it, especially if you got this far. Subscribe if you are brand new, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.